They fired me for redundancy. But what they didn't know was that the company couldn't run a single day without my signature. I still remember the look on my boss's face when I handed over my access card, like he had won. He smiled, said, "It's nothing personal, Sydney. You were just unnecessary." The whole office laughed. I stood there, holding back every word I wanted to scream. But deep down, I already knew something they didn't. A secret that could bring the whole company to its knees. Before we continue, if you've ever been humiliated, underestimated, or fired unfairly, don't scroll. Share this story, because what happened next turned the tables completely. 3 months before they fired me, the CEO, Mr. Parker, told me to handle all the license renewals for the company's new energy project. Everyone thought it was boring paperwork, but those documents were the heart of the business. Without them, every operation would legally shut down. I spent sleepless nights working on it, running through laws, approvals, and international requirements. And at the end, that license, the only one of its kind, was registered under my name. But I never told anyone. The day they fired me, I just smiled and said, "Are you sure about this?" Mr. Parker laughed. "Sydney, we've already made up our minds. We're bringing in someone who actually knows how to handle big projects." "Right," I said calmly. "Just make sure you read the documents before you start them." He rolled his eyes and waved me off. Everyone in the room clapped. Yes, clapped, as if they had just kicked out dead weight. They didn't know that they had just unplugged the machine that kept them alive. For weeks, I stayed quiet. I didn't post on LinkedIn, didn't rant to friends. I just watched as the company tried to move forward. Then one morning, I got an email from an old coworker. "Hey, Sydney," it said. "We can't access the plant. The license portal says ownership conflict. Do you know anything about that?" I smiled. Oh, I knew everything about that. See, the ownership conflict was simple. They couldn't operate legally without my approval, and they had fired the only person who could give it. Every minute the plant was shut down, they were losing $80,000. I waited. 2 days later, the call came from Mr. Parker himself. "Sydney." "Hi," he said, voice tight. "I think there's been a little mistake in our paperwork. It seems your name is still on some critical licenses." "Some?" I said softly. "You mean all of them?" He laughed nervously. "Right, well, we just need your signature to reassign," I interrupted. "You fired me, remember? You said I was redundant." Silence. He cleared his throat. "Look, we can offer you a consultancy fee." "Mr. Parker," I said, "I'll think about it. But next time, maybe don't call the backbone of your company unnecessary." I hung up, leaned back in my chair, and smiled for the first time in months. They thought they'd ended my career, but I held the one thing they couldn't replace: power. Mr. Parker didn't give up easily. By the next morning, my phone was flooded with calls, from HR, from the board, even from the company's legal team. They were desperate. The entire operation had gone dark overnight. No exports, no energy flow, no government clearance. Millions of dollars were now frozen, all because of a single signature. Mine. Before I tell you what I did next, if you've ever been betrayed or disrespected by your boss, share this story. Because this is where everything started turning in my favor. That same day, I received an email marked urgent from the board's executive director herself. "Sydney, we'd like to discuss your terms for license transfer. Please respond as soon as possible. The delay is costing us heavily." I smirked. My terms. Those 2 words were exactly what I had waited to hear. At 5 p.m. sharp, they scheduled a meeting on Zoom. All the top executives were there, their faces stiff and exhausted. Mr. Parker tried to sound calm. "Sydney," he started, "we all know there's been some confusion. The company's license was apparently registered under your name by mistake. We just need you to sign the release so we can continue operations." I looked directly into the camera. "By mistake? You told me to handle the paperwork myself. You signed every authorization form." He blinked. "That's not the point." "No, that is the point," I said. "You gave me full control, and now you're realizing what that means." Their lawyer tried to step in. "Ms. Brooks, please understand, this is a serious matter. The company is losing thousands every hour." I leaned closer to the camera. Then maybe you shouldn't have fired the person who kept it running. The silence that followed was perfect. Mr. Parker's voice dropped. What do you want, Sydney? That was it, and the moment everything flipped. The man who had humiliated me in front of 60 employees was now asking me what I wanted. I want my job back, I said, but not the one you gave me. I want the position above yours. Their eyes widened. The lawyer muttered, That's impossible. Then find someone else with an international operating license, I replied. Oh, wait. You can't, the board whispered among themselves, clearly panicking. Finally, the director said, Sydney, if you're serious, we can discuss compensation. Not compensation, I cut in. Control. Mr. Parker's face turned red. You can't control my company. I smiled slowly. It's not your company anymore. Not if you can't even turn the lights on without me. The call ended with chaos. Voices shouting, papers shuffling, screens freezing. But I sat back calm and steady. I knew the next move was mine, because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's letting them watch you take their seat. 2 days later, the board called for an emergency in-person meeting at the headquarters. The same office where I'd been escorted out like I was nothing. As I walked through the glass doors, every head turned. Whispers filled the air. The girl they fired was back, dressed in a black suit that screamed power. Mr. Parker was standing near the conference room, pretending to be busy, but the way his jaw tightened when he saw me said everything. Before we started, I handed over a folder. Inside it were all the compliance reports, license details, and export permits. Every single document they needed to get the business running again. You wanted control? I said softly. You'll have it back once we finalize my new role. The board members looked at each other. One of them asked, Sydney, what exactly are you asking for? I leaned forward. Chief Operations Director, full authority over all international dealings, and a 15% profit share. Mr. Parker slammed his hand on the table. That's ridiculous. You're asking for more than I earn. I didn't flinch. Then maybe it's time the company pays the one person who actually earned it. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The tension in that room was thick enough to choke on. Then the director finally said, If it means getting the operations back online, I'm in favor. One by one, the others agreed. Parker was outnumbered, completely cornered. His face turned pale as the director slid the contract across the table toward me. Congratulations, Sydney, she said. You're officially reinstated. Effective immediately. I signed the paper with a steady hand. The room fell silent again, but this time, the silence carried power. My power. As I stood up to leave, I looked straight at Mr. Parker. Next time you think someone is replaceable, I said, make sure they don't hold the key to your entire company. He didn't say a word, just stared, realizing that the woman he once called redundant now held his position, his control and his respect. Outside, as I stepped into the sunlight, my phone buzzed. Another email from the director. Welcome to your new office. Ms. Brooks, we're lucky to have you back. I smiled, knowing this wasn't luck. It was karma finally catching up, and this time it had my signature on it. That night, as I sat alone in my new office, the one that used to belong to Mr. Parker, I looked around at the polished desk, the glass walls, and the skyline reflecting my face. It felt surreal. Just 2 weeks ago I was packing my things in tears. Now I was running the company that had thrown me away. But deep inside, I wasn't celebrating yet. Because I knew Parker wouldn't stay quiet. Men like him never do. They hate losing power, especially to someone they underestimated. The next morning, my suspicion turned real. A confidential report landed on my desk. Parker had been quietly moving funds from our international accounts, trying to make me look incompetent. The plan was simple: crash the system, then blame me for mismanagement. I printed the report and walked straight to the boardroom. The same directors who once pitied me now stood when I entered. There's something you all need to see, I said, placing the file on the table. As the pages turned, their faces changed. Confusion, then shock, then anger. The director looked up. Is this true? I nodded. He's been siphoning money for months. That's why our margins dropped before I was fired. He framed it as redundancy to push me out before this surfaced. Within minutes, security was called. Mr. Parker was dragged in, furious, trying to defend himself. She's lying. She's making this up to destroy me. I stepped closer. Destroy you? No, Parker. You did that yourself the moment you thought firing me would hide your secrets. The director turned coldly toward him. You're officially terminated. Effective immediately. The entire room watched as Parker's ID card was taken from him. He looked at me one last time, pure hatred in his eyes. But I just smiled. Don't worry, I said quietly. I'll make sure the company runs better than ever. You can finally rest, since you're so redundant now. As he stormed out, everyone's attention shifted to me. The director extended her hand. Sydney, you saved this company. Again. This time I allowed myself to breathe. The same people who once ignored me now looked at me with respect, or maybe fear. Either way, it didn't matter. I'd earned my place, not by revenge, but by proving that silence and skill are the most powerful weapons of all. I walked back to my office, sat in Parker's old chair, and whispered to myself, redundant? No, irreplaceable. A week later, the headlines told the story for me. Former executive exposed in corporate fraud scandal. New director saves company from collapse. My inbox was full. Journalists, investors, and even old colleagues who once avoided me were now praising me. Some wanted interviews, others wanted partnerships. I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't need their validation anymore. Instead, I called a quiet meeting with my small, loyal team, the same people who had believed in me when I had nothing. We sat in the same conference room where I'd been humiliated months ago, but this time, my seat was at the head of the table. From today, I said, we rebuild. Our way. No shortcuts, no politics, just results. They nodded, eyes shining with pride. The atmosphere was different now. Every word I spoke carried weight. Every plan I made actually mattered. Later that night, I went home and opened the box that still held my termination letter. The one that had started it all. I read it one last time, then tore it into pieces. It wasn't anger I felt anymore. It was peace. My phone buzzed again. A message from the board director. The shareholders want you to take over as acting CEO until the next election. Congratulations, Sydney. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then smiled. It wasn't just about getting my job back. It was about rewriting the entire story. Turning their rejection into my revolution. Standing by the window, city lights flickering below, I finally whispered, you can fire a person, but you can't erase her purpose. And for the first time in a long time, I felt it. Freedom, power, and peace, all at once. Sydney Brooks wasn't just back. She had become everything they said she could never be. And more.